I, 32F, haven't had sex with my husband, 36 meters, in years. Should I ask to open our marriage? My husband can't not have sex at all due to medical reasons. So for about 5 years there has been nothing sexual at all. Even if I ask him and tell him, he still has fingers in his mouth that he can use to at least help me. But it's always a no. He always tells me I can get toys. The thing is, I do have some, and I'm at the point I miss the physical touch of a human being. He has spoken to doctors, there is no fixing what happened. So should I accept I'm never gonna have sex again, or should I ask him to open our marriage? I'm at a loss on what to do. Any help or advice is appreciated. Update, I replied earlier but I couldn't locate it. I'm gonna place it here just in case. Thank you to everyone who was replied. I read each and every one of them. I understand all your point of views. Let me add more info that has been asked. My husband cannot get an erection due to cut nerves during surgery. He can't feel anything there anymore. We got married really young. I am still in love with him. But I don't even feel like a woman anymore. We've had talks in the past about my needs, but he does not want to participate in any way and just tells me to use toys and brushes me off. I have asked him too if we can find other ways to bring him pleasure as well, but that's a no as well. We still love each other, but there is no intimacy. I know this is hard on him too, but I'm the only one trying. I don't want a divorce, which is why I thought maybe opening up the marriage would help, since he doesn't want to be part of finding a solution. There's something you're not foreseeing with the open relationship thing. Say you meet someone and you're attracted to them and you start hooking up. Sex is great and you're thrilled. And then you go home to that guy who wouldn't even engage with you intimately, however he still could. That guy who was dismissive about your needs. Your glow will be another thing he doesn't want to deal with. You'll be picking fights for an excuse to go see your friend with benefits in no time. Also, the person who is up for this scenario will run screaming right around the time you start thinking of leaving your marriage to be with them. Probably better to divorce. If it was an injury or medical condition, then he is probably upset that his penis doesn't work. Maybe sexuality triggers the disappointment he has from losing the ability to ever have sex or orgasm again. I know if I lost my penis function, that is how I would feel. This is something that therapy can help with. Open relationships work when both people 100% want them and both people are getting action. Forgive my harsh terms, but a husband who stays monogamous while his wife doesn't is a cuckold. And unless that's his fetish, he probably won't like that scenario. If you want to make it work, then try couples counseling, sex therapy. Have him meet you halfway. If he can't do that, then you will need to ask yourself if you're ready for a sexless life. If not, then consider separating. Sounds difficult for both of you. He 100% has trauma from the cut nerves. He's in pain and he's going through an identity shock. Hemingway wrote, "The sun also rises," about a guy injured in WW1 who can't have sex. Possibly after being physically injured. And every section of the book is a discussion of the nature of masculinity and his identity and ability to interact with the world. This is not your fault. You are stuck with someone who can't help you with a basic human need. His role as your spouse is changed because he isn't willing to touch you. It's probably because he's quietly in pain and in shock because he's disconnected from his identity as a man. Still not your fault, but it's become your problem. He needs to go to therapy ASAP. He needs support and therapy can help, even if you divorce. It sounds like he is not taking care of himself. Shutting down part of his emotions is just as unhealthy as cutting off blood flow to a limb or part of his brain. It's going to cause the other parts of him to die off. And he's going to self-destruct. He's definitely shutting down. He might not be able to process what he's going through. And he's avoiding any kind of touch because he's holding in a lot of emotions. If he opens up a little, he'll make a crack in the dam and the whole flood will be unleashed. You need therapy. 2. You're going through something very difficult and you need support from someone who is able to hear your thoughts and recognize what is going on without having a personal stake in the situation. You both would benefit from couples counseling. This is a big hurdle to your relationship. You guys need a couples therapist who is also a sex therapist to help you both work through this. I'll be direct though, if he is not willing to work with you on this, you need to move on. At that point it is not an issue of his illness, medical issue, it is an issue of his lack of willingness to be a partner. His total lack of willingness to meet your needs in any way is a massive problem, and it 100% is a reason to end a marriage. Humans need touch and affection, and if he is not willing to give that to you, then the relationship is over. No, just divorce. Asking for an open marriage is unnecessarily cruel to him. Divorce is a better option than an open marriage. Sounds like divorce with extra steps. If he's not willing to do anything, then why stay at all? Comfort, sex and intimacy are really important for relationships. I know of other couples who have had similar problems. Due to paralysis, spinal cord injuries, they all focus on having her on top. Hugging, kissing, fingering and oral, especially the last one. It gives the woman the relief she needs and him the assurance that he can still satisfy her. One couple even says that their sex life without his penis is better than ever. There is a way if there is the desire. Key is convincing him that he is still just as much a man without the use of his penis. No, an open relationship isn't a band-aid that you slap on your marriage and it suddenly solves your problems. It's only going to make things worse. You should consider couples counseling. Divorce over open marriage any day. 1 is a stopgap. You don't even have a fun husband who you can trade sexy stories with. He will hate your joy the same way he hates handling you sexually. If he suggests it might work. If you suggest it, you will divorce, and it's better to do that instead of hurting each other. You should get couple therapy though. You are hurting and it's perfectly normal to want human touch. I'm guessing he is hurting too and that there is some trauma there for him. Do your research. This literally never works in these situations and is just a slower, more painful divorce. I think there are a few things to consider here that I don't seem to have seen anyone comment on. 1. We do not know the extent or nature of this injury. In a day and age where doctors regularly build somewhat functional penises out of the flesh from the thigh for people to transition genders much as possible, and for an MD to say nothing can be done, this injury must be very extreme, or perhaps becoming aroused is physically painful or dangerous for him. She would have called him a monster if he was one, and obviously still wants him to touch her, so it's unlikely he is one. He must have some very good reasons for not wanting to do this. Guys are used to doing all sorts of undesirable stuff to make their wives happy, and while not usually sexual, it seems rather odd that he is not doing this. 2. Many of you mention that if he has psychological issues from the physical trauma that he has had 5 years to get therapy for this and should be over it by now. I can weigh in on this as I am a man who has been diagnosed with severe CPTSD from abuse that was only somewhat sexual in nature. I haven't had sex in over 3 years, and before that I was a very sexual person. 34 times a week most of my adult life. I've also done a tremendous amount of therapy and work on this over the past 5 years and still have a ways to go, and we have no idea where he might be in healing or if he had the resources I did. I've done everything from talk therapy to EMDR to a partial hospitalization at a mental health rehab hospital, brain scans, neurobiofeedback, psychiatry, etc. At this point it's been 5 years since I've had a real job, and I'm finally at a point where I'm starting to apply for work and just landed my first interview. I'm so much better than I was. But dating and intimacy are still a huge challenge for me, and just the thought of having sex is not only terrifying but physically makes me ill. I've been going on dates for about a year now and it's slowly getting better, but if I was forced to do something sexual I would be really worried about the damage it could do to me. I know other men who are even worse than I am and have met many sexually abused women that also have these issues. Some things are so horrific to go through that it changes the way your brain works, and PTSD is a really weird thing. I've made combat veterans and junkies weep in group therapy telling just little pieces of what I went through, and I was never even physically very damaged. I really didn't even start to really regain function until I turned to pharmaceuticals, which I wanted to avoid. Now I'm on 3 psychiatric medications and 3 more to keep my blood pressure under control from those. It's not fun. My point is, we have no idea how damaging doing other sex stuff with her would be to him and how far back it would put him in his healing. PTSD recover is oftentimes a 3 steps forward and then 210 steps back process. You really have to relive and reprocess each part of the trauma to resolve it somehow. Intimate partner and sexual abuse and violence is some of the most damaging stuff out there. 3. If this was a woman who went through horrific sexual abuse or trauma, I do think that the women commenting would have a completely different tone to their advice, and honestly that makes me really sad. Whatever the case, I hope they can resolve their issues. Divorce is no fun either and will only add to both of their trauma and potentially damage their kids for life if there are any. If this happened to me, I'm a 38M. I would want my wife to divorce me. Even though we both love each other, I would not be able to deal with the thought of my wife getting plowed by another man then coming home to me. I would rather us go our separate ways and her go live her own life without me. Your husband already is dealing with enough mentally, he doesn't need that on top. If you bring up opening up the marriage, it'll probably lead to divorce anyway, and it'll be much more painful. If my wife asked me for an open relationship, I would say it's not a problem. Single people can sleep with whomever they want. I would leave and call a lawyer right then. No, that's a disaster waiting to happen. But you should ask for couples counseling. I feel if you ask him to open up the marriage, you will be hurting him a lot. I think he might already feel extremely insecure and inadequate by not being able to please you, and I'm sure he's thought of those options as well. Have you considered therapy? Obviously sex is an extremely sensitive subject for him, but maybe speaking with someone not just about sex but about how to love forward as a unit could help and open the dialogue. Lots of comments already, so I am a little late to the party. I am in a vaguely similar situation. I went into a diabetic coma years ago with a near-fatal amount of sugar in my blood due to my pancreas deciding to kick the bucket out of the blue. The sugar level was so high it damaged my nerves, and so certain extremities like toes, fingers and other parts don't have nearly the sense of touch they once had. Everything works fine, but it's created certain anxieties that make it difficult to keep it up. Long story short, I feel very much where your husband is coming from. I've long thought about what I might do should the day come where the blue pill stops working. It's incredibly demoralizing. As a guy, it's difficult to imagine what use I am in that situation. However, I would never ask my wife or GF to simply give up that part of their lives for me. It's not really fair. So yes, it would very much break my heart, but I would work to adapt to an open relationship out of fairness to my partner. Have you thought about what you'll do when you start to catch feelings for your outside lover? Even if I ask him and tell him he still has fingers in his mouth that he can use to at least help me. But it's always a no. This man has been told he'll never have sex again. And you want him to pleasure you while knowing he will never get to experience joy from it himself. Again? That's hella inconsiderate. Edit. The trauma he likely carries from being told he can never have sex again may have made it feel inconceivable to do anything sexual again. I don't know what it's like to be told that, but it's got to be so devastating. So should I accept I'm never gonna have sex again, or should I ask him to open our marriage? You should have a conversation with him. That you are to the point where you desperately miss human touch. But you also realize that it's unfair to ask that of him. So you want to discuss it with him to see what solution you can come up with together. You are both right. You want sex. You have a sex drive. That's normal. He can't have sex, so he doesn't want to be sexual with you. You are both right, but sadly hopelessly incompatible due to whatever medical problem he has. If he isn't open to an open relationship, whatever the terms, then it might be time to consider parting ways. If you find it hard to have this conversation with just the two of you, I'd recommend working through this with a well-respected couples counselor. However you do this, you'll want to discuss the terms of this in great detail.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.